But the Wagatha Christie case is back. Rebekah Vardy is locked in a new battle, this time over Coleen Rooney's £1.8 million legal bill, because, of course, you might remember that the caper that took place up at the High Court, which I think was last summer, more or less, went on through the summer, slightly embarrassing for all people concerned, the Wayne Rooneys of this world and the Rebekah Vardys of this world. The legal costs were all awarded to Wayne Rooney's wife. So basically, the Wagatha Christie trial meant that it was the Rebekah Vardy end of things that had to pay the bill. Now, they're claiming that these legal bills have been overinflated. Let's find out from Mark Borkowski what's going on. Mark, a very good afternoon to you.
Hi, Mike. Good afternoon.
Now, just when you thought it was safe to get away from these people, they're back on the front page of The Sun this morning. Apparently, Rebekah Vardy's not happy with the amount of lawyers' fees that are included in here. I mean, I dread to say it, but, I mean, when you get involved in the High Court, that's what tends to happen.
Yes, it is. I think that Coleen Rooney offered Rebekah Vardy plenty of opportunity to settle this case before going into a very expensive High Court action. Obviously, for her, it was a point of principle, or her advice told her that she might win this. But, of course, she didn't. And David Sherborne, the spectacular KC, won the case for Coleen Rooney. And, of course, there's going to be costs for witnesses, costs for travel, costs for hotels. I mean, it's a very, very expensive game going to the High Court, not only in terms of the cost, but also how much information is on public view for newspapers and everything to send on. And so, you know, you've got to be very careful, and possibly this could have been sorted out. There wouldn't have been this level of publicity, and there certainly wouldn't be this eye-watering bill, because there's always celebrity fights. People going to the High Court, whether it's Harry or Wagatha Christie, is a very, very good day for my friends in the legal profession. They're rubbing their hands with glee.
Well, this is the thing, and also looking at some of the numbers, interestingly, in The Sun, the difference between the budgeted cost and the actual cost is incredible. So budgeted cost for Sherborne, £300,000, but actual cost or requested cost, $524,000, a couple of $100,000 over the top. Similarly, pre-trial research, $12,000, actual cost $45,000, expert $32,000, ended up costing $148,000. I mean, it's no coincidence that, as you say, David Sherborne, who was also Harry's lawyer, is involved in this. I wonder how much he's billing the Duke of Netflix for all of his work.
I mean, it beggars belief, really. These numbers are extraordinary. It's the average woman and bloke on the street, frankly. I mean, it's figures that they can't contemplate.
Yeah.
And one has to sort of take a step back, that if you were trying to get some sense of justice, if you potentially were in the right, you've got to have a huge amount of sort of liquid cash to be able to fight these cases. And whether we've seen oligarchs, we've seen these spectacular civil cases and corporate cases, it's very difficult for people to get justice in that sense, because if you're taking on a big bank, you're taking on a big institution who can afford, lawyers, advisors, PR people, got very little chance of winning. And we've seen the HBOS scandal with Lloyds Bank, you've seen Post Office, you've seen massive settlements that just haven't been reached because they drag it out and drag it out and drag it out and squeeze the pips out of people. But when it comes to big celebrities, and obviously the magnifying glass goes on that and you focus on it and you begin to think, my God, this is a lot of money. And I'm sure that there will be a lot of negotiation going on at the moment, but unfortunately, that's what the courts have told Rebekah Vardy to do: pay up costs. And you should have really taken the advice of people who probably thought, is this fight worth it?
Yes.
In terms of the victory you might not get.
Well, it was one of the more ridiculous court cases, I think, of all time, and everybody went, these people just haven't got enough to do. But it comes at a rough time for old Rebekah Vardy, because Jamie Vardy, of course, is no longer going to be making the kind of money that he's been making, because Leicester have just been relegated out of the Premier League. He's apparently going to leave or take a 50% pay cut, which he probably won't do. So whether he ends up... I mean, his footballing career is coming to a bit of an end, so the last thing he needs is a few million quid going out the back door, doesn't he?
Well, look, I mean, if you're a Premiership footballer, you know, and a high-end Premiership footballer, and let's forget that Jamie Vardy is one of the remarkable stories of the year Leicester won the league, but he doesn't sustain.
No.
All mega figures. You might be, you know, Messi or Ronaldo, but if I was Jamie Vardy's agent now, I'd be pushing towards to go out to either China or to Saudi Arabia, because that's really the only place. And a lot of people, whether it's divorce or, you know, we've seen before that when there's a matrimonial case, bills being paid, you'll find people going back out on tour. I think that hysterically was the reason the Monty Python guys refused to do that gig, because I think John Cleese said at the time, if I'm not mistaken, he had a divorce settlement to come to terms.
I've always thought John Cleese must have had some very bad lawyers, because he always seemed to end up paying out loads and loads of money to people he didn't even have children with.
Well, the question is, you've got to choose very carefully, you know, perhaps when you have a huge amount of fame and you measure wealth, I mean, you know, there's a lot of people who are focused on you. Unfairly in many estimations, and there's nothing more foolish than a sad old man, and I say that from personal experience.
Listen, I wasn't expecting you to go there, Mark, but thank you for doing so. I might as well get you on Harry and Meghan while you're here. So it turns out that them saying they were going to take a step back wasn't entirely voluntary.
Well, I'm fascinated on the story at the moment. You know, clearly, if they were worth their money, Spotify would not be dumping them.
Right.
And possibly Netflix have had enough. You know, if you charged a premium amount, your content had better be worth it, because it's a very competitive world in terms of getting eyeballs. I mean, Spotify did well out of it. I mean, undoubtedly they got loads of subscriptions, so has Netflix. So it's no big deal for them. But I always thought that we're going to see Meghan now, I think, as more of a lifestyle brand. And if the stories are correct, there's brewing, then in fact they've done a deal with Dior. Was there a reason Harry wore a Dior suit to the coronation? He went to trial.
Tacky, that was it.
You know, so they've got a good instinct for wearing money, but let's face it, Mike, they need lots of money to maintain their very rich lifestyle, and I'm afraid many of their friends in California perhaps are not going to prop them up. So could this be the unpicking of a thread? Because when you can't live in the style you've been accustomed, and there's a lot of overheads, and let's not face it, he's going into court, taking on newspapers and, you know, probably getting the fourth estate in the better shape now, according to Harry. There'll be big bills there as well. But,
well, exactly right. I mean, he hasn't been in court for a couple of days. He must be due back soon, mustn't he?
God knows. I mean, the thing is that who wants to be in court? These are toxic environments. Unfortunately, I've represented people who've been into the High Court many occasions. It is a soul-destroying, stressful, and deeply unpleasant experience, because you're pit against whatever you think you might be able to say, win or whatever. There's someone who's going to is pitching their tent against you as well, with a lot of people in it.
Yeah.
So I think that you just want to stay well clear. Well,
it's a lose-lose, isn't it? I mean, even if you win the case, you still end up giving most of the money to the lawyers. You know, even if you get damages, it doesn't really do your reputation any good, because something's probably come out in the court that you'd rather hadn't come out. It's just not worth it.
Well, it's a stress, and it's a stress for the families who have to go through this as well, and the time that's involved, not just your days in court, but the months sometimes in preparing for it. And when you get a court case, the stress of waiting for it, and then a judge might not come for months afterwards. It's toxic. Dreadful business. Well, Mark, listen, good to talk to you as ever. Thank you. Mark Borkowski, PR guru, of course, on the news that the Wagatha war continues over the cost of legal representation. But it gives you an insight, doesn't it, into what Prince Harry must be spending, because this is the same guy, David Sherborne, the same lawyer that he's been using. You're talking millions and millions and millions of pounds to have that case represented. It's ridiculous.